If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Escape Pod, a part serious, part hilarious dramedy featuring stories of escape. I am Julie.
I am Charity.
And we are coming to you from the One Heart campus in beautiful Rapid City, South Dakota, which has actually been beautiful weather-wise the last week and a half. It's been like springtime in winter.
Yeah, a little skip in my step. Walked to the coffee shop today without a coat on.
It's beautiful blue skies that I noticed this morning.
And that is the best thing for seasonal affective. It starts to feel like spring. I'm just happier. The days are a little bit brighter and lighter, longer. And
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer.
Well, then don't. Then just don't.
But it is technically still winter.
You can resist. Come on, resist. It is technically winter, but this has been the best winter in a long time.
It hasn't been bad at all. It hasn't been bad at all.
So, yeah.
So,
what are you trying to escape this week?
Ooh.
I'm going to flip the tables on you, lady.
People who stand too close to me in line.
Ooh, do tell.
I had one of those. Yeah, can I just start by saying it wasn't crowded in the line.
Oh, so
it
not
was
a
just
big,
two of us.
long line with lots of people waiting? No?
Not a rock concert, not a football game where you're crowded next to people in the stands. None of that. Nope, just ordering food and realizing my purse is bumping the person because they're right next to me. And to the point that the cashier said, "Oh, I thought you two were together." Nope. I'm not sure I stand that close to my friends in a line. It was a little odd. I don't think it was intentional.
Just in La La Land, maybe.
Just in La La Land, yeah. But it was kind of funny. And then when he made that comment to her, she apologized to him. And I thought, I feel like you should be.
You were invading my space.
Apologizing me, not him. But all is well. It's fine. We're fine. What are you escaping from this week?
Two things. One, migraines. I woke up, I kind of went to bed with a headache, and by 4 o'clock when I woke up, it was a raging migraine. So canceled physical therapy because there was no way. It's so bright in there. And I have done physical therapy in sunglasses before, but today was not going to be that day because I was ready to vomit.
I wonder what people think of you when you come in with this,
I'm incognito. Who knows what they think?
She thinks she's so cool with her cool sunglasses.
Care. It's it's this or you're going to see the pain in my eyes. And you know what really sucks is I have not been sleeping well because my husband's been congested and doing this snoring thing and waking me up. And then when I'm awake, no matter if it's midnight or 2 o'clock, I don't go back to sleep. And so he slept in a different room last night. So I slept all the way through the night and wake up once. And then I wake up with a freaking migraine. I'm I can't win. So anyway, that. And then also big effing zits in the middle of my forehead. That came on yesterday. I'm just my forehead hurts. And now, oh my God, it's awful. So anyway.
I assure you listeners, it's not that big.
It feels big.
It might feel big.
Throbbing and you know what I mean? Have you? Yeah.
Yes, so
I
do.
I'm happy that I can still get them because at some point in the very near future, I probably will never get a zit again in my life. But, so it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah. But man, I'm just God, I've got to weather this one out. So those are the two things I'm escaping this week.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope we have a
real world problems here.
Right.
Yeah.
Classic. Tell us some tales of true crime, would you please? What's our theme this week? I don't think I know enough about it to give it a title.
This is one big story.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it a theme. It's an odd but true story involving a husband and wife. So Samantha Wolford and Ernie Ibarra. He goes by Dagan, so you'll hear me call him Dagan. And
how do you get Dagan out of that?
I think because he was a junior and he didn't want to be called Ernie or Ernest. So I think he just came up with, he's a gamer. So maybe Dagan just sounds really kind of badass. I don't know. That's conjecture on my part. And it's kind of cool. But so that's what he went by. So we're going to talk about that. And there are so many twists and turns in this story. And, we often talk about the ripple effect of trauma, right? That it's not always just the victim or victims that are hurt in these different situations. So I want you to think about that as we go through this story, because it is absolutely bananas.
Okay.
Which seems to, we just keep upping our game.
Those are the stories we go for here.
Yeah. And this isn't that long ago. This was in 2015.
Okay.
When all of this happened. So in Mount Pleasant, Texas, sounds like an absolutely idyllic place. So again, two main characters are Samantha Wolford. She was born August 28th, 1989, just to kind of help you place her in your mind. What year were you born? Can I ask that?
80.
80.
Child of the 80s.
Okay. Interesting. So Samantha, her greatest desire in life was to become a famous YouTuber.
Of course.
Or an actress.
Come on.
She had her own YouTube channel, always doing self-promotion and that kind of a thing, really hoping to make it big. I watched a few of her promotional videos, and it would be like 10 interesting things about me or whatever. And, I don't get it because I've just never followed an influencer or anything. Like, that's just not my thing. It's way beyond my generation. But, I understand that that's the way it is now. So she was really working hard at this. And then her husband, and this is before they were married, so Ernest Ibarra Jr. Went by the name Dagan. He was born on Christmas Day, 1985, so he's a Christmas baby. And this guy, an artist, a woodworker, so he was making bats at a local bat manufacturer. Cool. He also worked at Little Caesars Pizza to make ends meet. Like, super hard worker. People really liked him. He was also really good with computers. So he could fix just about anything. He was an avid gamer. So that was just really probably what he really wanted to do, but he had all these responsibilities. One of his former managers even said that he once spent $100 buying art supplies for a daughter of a coworker when they fell on hard times at Christmas, and she was pretty sure he couldn't afford it.
Oh.
By the time I'm done telling you this story, you're probably going to get it. So it sounds like he's just an all-around great guy. And so Samantha was 19. She was already the single mother of twin girls when she met Dagan. So
that's a young person to have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They fell in love. They had another set of twins.
Wow.
After one set of twins, I think I would stop. But and in two sets of twins.
I knew a family with two sets of twins.
Tie the tubes, please. Then they had a third child together. So now we're talking 5 kids. So now they're a family of 7. And he kept working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Samantha was a stay-at-home mom. So you can imagine the burden on his shoulders in particular. And in 5 kids, I mean, you can't afford daycare.
Right.
Unless you have a high-paying job, it makes more sense financially to stay home and raise your kids. So that was their situation. Their lives somehow, though, took a turn. Their marriage took a turn. So February 2015, Samantha and Dagan each had very super memorable days. So what I'm going to do is walk you through each of those days from what I could gather from their perspectives. And then we'll kind of see how those two storylines converge. Okay. So they had started having some sort of relationship trouble. Samantha had been out with her 5 kids, visiting a friend in the hospital. I think the friend had just had a baby. And she started venting about her marital. Okay, we're not going to do this today, are we? Okay. All right, count how many times I do this. Marital woes is what she was venting about. The friend had another visitor by the name of John Sanford. I'm not sure how they knew each other, but everybody's happy about this baby. They're visiting, blah, blah, blah. So Samantha's venting about her marriage and claiming that Dagan was abusive toward her. She implied that she wished she knew someone who could take charge of such a thing for her. I mean, I've had people in my life where I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? I mean, hire a hit person or whatever. But nobody ever acts on it, right? Well, then they went down a rabbit hole, she and these people they're talking to, about what it would be like to get Dagan out of the picture. Maybe they could plant drugs on him. Maybe they could frame him, send him to prison so she could be free of the abuse, yada, yada, yada. And then from what I can piece together, they go to another person's house to make enchiladas. So that she'd been out, again, all with her 5 kids in tow. And this was the home of a man by the name of Octavius Rhymes. And so try to picture this. Mount Pleasant, Texas, there's this little white house, and then in the backyard is a tent. And a man by the name of Jose Ponce and his wife were living in the tent.
Okay.
So clearly, I mean, nobody's got a lot of money in this scenario. They're doing the best they can. So Jose and John, so John, the guy at the hospital room, and then Jose, the guy living in the tent, were brothers-in-law.
Okay.
Okay. So Jose's wife or significant other is John's sister.
Okay.
And she'll come into the story later. So now we have these three men, so Jose and John and Octavius, getting involved in Samantha's marital issues. And they actually continued to plot and scheme about how they could help her with her problem. In fact, when she was talking to John Sanford in the hospital, he's allegedly said something to the effect of, when she's like, I wish I knew somebody who could do that. Well, I'm the kind of person who could do something like that. Oh, but
like a protective big brother.
Whatever. But they just met.
Like,
so it's like,
that's what's so odd about it.
It is odd.
Yeah.
It is odd.
Sure.
Okay, so now we're going to skip to Dagan for just a minute. So he's working multiple jobs, trying to provide for this family, and she's out traipsing around the town with 5 kids, making enchiladas and having a good old time plotting and scheming. He's texting her. He's trying to figure out where she's at, where the kids are at. She just keeps ignoring him. And according to a coworker, he was really worried about his kids this whole time. And he's at work providing for this family of 7 while she's ghosting him. So just to try to imagine his state of mind. Her new friends tell Samantha to leave the door to their house unlocked when she got home that night after the whole enchilada party. And they would come in, they would plant the drugs on her husband, who, as far as I can tell, did not do drugs, and be her knights in shining armor, right? Okay. So fast forward a couple hours, a 911 call comes in to the Titus County Dispatch, and it's Samantha's aunt. And so stating that she found her niece bound and gagged in her home, and that her niece's husband, Dagan, was missing.
Oh, my.
Now, the kiddos at this time are ages 7 to 1, and they were all allegedly asleep through what I'm going to describe next. So her aunt tells dispatch that she's going to untie her niece, unbind her, and then Samantha gets on the phone, and there's video of all of this. So body cam from the officers and all, like, you can see the majority of this interaction, which is where I pulled a lot of this from. It's super interesting. So dispatch asks her, do you need medical attention? She says she doesn't, that the intruders only hit her once in the face after dragging her out of bed and slamming her on the floor and then dragging her down the stairs, which I imagine was really painful because in the video I saw it was like a really cool old house that was in dire need of upkeep and cleaning, but it had this spiral staircase.
Oh, my.
So I can't imagine getting dragged down a spiral staircase. So anyway, I'm just thinking of that now. But where did I go? Where did I leave off here? Okay, dragged her down the stairs. She starts just spraying law enforcement on the scene with just a ton of details, and very interestingly, a ton of details. Evidently, she had called her mom, who lived an hour away, dialed with her nose allegedly because she was bound and gagged. Mom calls the aunt, who was much closer in proximity to Samantha's house, and it was this aunt who found her. So that's kind of how that happened.
Gotcha.
But I mean,
that's
your husband gets taken, you're bound and gagged, and you call your mom?
Yeah.
Anyway, that'll come up later. So law enforcement arrives. She tells them what happened, says she and her husband had been sleeping. They heard a noise. 3 intruders that she did not recognize grabbed them, jerked them out of bed, held a knife to her throat, slammed her on the floor, tied her up, told her not to move. They were punching her husband over and over with the butt of a gun, like hitting him with the butt of a gun. Pistol whipping, I think that's called. She continues to tell quite an elaborate story, and then she claims these 3 intruders took Dagan's phone, cut her shirt off, forced her to stand nude in front of them all. And at times when she's answering the officers' questions, this was bizarre. She changes her voice as if to imitate the intruders either giving her a command or talking to one another. I've never seen anything like it. So the police are noting the evidence. They're going around the house, checking out her story, and like the front door was kicked in and it was destroyed. Like it was in splinters, but the lock and the deadbolt were intact. So that's weird, okay? And while they're looking at this stuff, again, it's all on body cam, she fires off a text message. So this at the same time, the cops are trying to ping Dagan's phone because she says the intruders took his phone. And it hits in a place called Pittsburgh, Texas. They ask her if she knows anyone in Pittsburgh, and she's like, no. They also find long locks of hair on the floor, and she says it's her husband's, that the intruders cut off his hair, and he did have longer hair, so that she had a piece of her husband to remember him by. So it's very dramatic.
Ooh, that's creepy.
It is very creepy.
I don't like that at all.
So according to Samantha, when she dialed for help with her nose, she hit the first name she saw on the screen, which is why it was her mom, who, like I said, lived an hour away. And one of the officers asks her to write out her official statement. And she hesitates, questioning how, quote, writing her official statement is going to help the police find her husband in these crucial hours. And so, like, she's all helpful, giving him a ton of information. And now that they want her to write it down, she's just like, why don't I do that? Why?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. You need to go find my husband. Meanwhile, she keeps just giving them a bunch of details. So 3:19 a.m., she fires off another text. Okay, so what are your thoughts so far?
I mean, I think they're staging it to make it look real. She's providing probably too many details. I don't know that people in a lot of trauma, I mean, we are not humans aren't great witnesses, right?
Yeah.
Like it is really hard to remember a lot of things, especially if your brain is being
Put through hell at that time?
Yeah, exactly. Great description. And so, yeah, it seems odd. The other thing is it is odd, at least on my phone, which I never have the newest phone. So I might have gotten my phone in 2015. Maybe not quite that long ago, but it's an older phone.
Yeah,
and like if I can get it to pop up a number right away, it would go to an emergency number. You know what I mean? Like that's the there is like an emergency spot on it.
Yep.
And so same thing where I guess that is what. So was she found naked? Are you allowed to tell me that?
She was not found naked.
Okay, so that's weird too. She was bound. Okay.
First question that came up, well, I had multiple questions, but how did she call her mother if she was gagged?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a daughter.
Yeah.
If I got a call from my daughter going,
yeah,
I would
go check.
freaking call 911, not some aunt.
Yeah.
I would call dispatch myself, right? So I thought that was weird. Also watching, again, because this body cam footage is just fascinating. She doesn't once ask about her children. She has 5 kids in the house, and she's not comforting her kids. Like, there's none of that. Not asking about her husband. She's just telling this story. I couldn't figure out what the point of them cutting her clothes off. She wasn't sexually assaulted. Like, that made no sense. Yeah.
Silver linings.
Well, changing of her voice.
Yeah, that's odd.
I wish I would have clipped that out so you could hear it. But it's just like, well, one piece I remember, she's like, I don't know who they were, but maybe one of them was named Luke, because all of a sudden he's like, hey, Luke. And I'm going, like, I can't raise one eyebrow, but I would have. I mean, it was just totally weird. How did these kids not wake up? Because she's talking about them screaming through this. They're pistol whipping her husband. He's yelling.
Yeah.
Were the kids drugged? Like,
well, although I will say,
wild.
I have found now that I do have 2 children who sleep through the night and just not one, because for the longest time I only had one who slept through the night. But I do think kids are harder sleepers than adults, just in general. That's not the case for everybody, but I being a mom, right? Like, you hear something, it's going to jar you awake pretty quickly. My husband's a super light sleeper, but I would definitely say there's things that happen that I'm surprised don't wake up my kids, and they don't necessarily wake up your kids. Still, though,
but
this much commotion, correct. Yeah, I think it's very
suspect.
It's
unlikely.
Very suspect.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Investigator arrives on the scene. He starts working on developing his theory of the case. And he's immediately skeptical, just like you are and I was. So there's no blood for the first part of it in the places where it should have been, according to her storyline. Doesn't match her claim that Dagan was pistol whipped over and over again. She keeps name dropping someone and they bleep it out to protect that person's identity, which I think is great. And first she keeps saying it's the only thing she can think of. If so-and-so was involved, giving it some kind of a drug connection. And then later she claims the intruders were saying this same person's name that I don't know. But then earlier she says, like I said a little bit ago, that she had used the name Luke, that they had used the name Luke. And that name never comes up again. So she's all over the board. And I know high crisis situations, people behave erratically. It's possible there may have been drugs involved too. So it was a lot to follow. But I mean, it was exhausting to watch this interaction because it's just like, your head's on a swivel. It is wild. I really felt for the investigators in this case. But she makes no mention to the cops of her husband being abusive, which I found odd. And then she says that the intruders wanted $20,000. And if you saw the condition this family was living in,
you wouldn't assume they had
I also wouldn't assume she was a stay-at-home mom because it was, I was raised by a stay-at-home mom for the most part, and
everything was clean.
The house was always clean, right? Yeah. So it was just a mess. And I don't know where they would have $20,000.
Although there are 5 kids and they're all little.
This was beyond that. Okay. We're talking like
borderline hoarding?
No, like diapers and feces and urine on the floor and just garbage and cigarette butts ground into the carpet and just
that's
dirty. The wall, everything was dirty. Okay. So, also dogs, 5 kids along with multiple dogs. It just wasn't fit for human habitation, in my opinion. And even law enforcement later alluded to the same thing. But it's weird because on the body cam footage, as soon as the officers are engaging with her directly, she uses this crying, scratchy voice and, it's just so dramatic. And then when they're not looking at her, she just has this dead look on her face.
Oh, weird.
And I'm like, maybe she's really practicing out her acting skills and is hoping to land a role. I don't know. But to me, it made me feel like she had started a bit and then she was committed to that bit and she was going to see it through. But was totally out of her league, okay? But she had to keep it going. So then she asks the cops, are you guys trying to accuse me of something? Kind of out of the blue. They had said nothing, just out of the blue. And then she starts asking what kind of gun the officer has. Can I see it, she says. Can you take it out? And the cop is like, no. We don't do that. And then she gets all chummy. Now she's trying to be best friends with the cops. And I'm like,
your husband's allegedly
my husband has been kidnapped.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in making friends right now. Like, it's just bizarre. So she starts dropping other hints that seem like red herrings, mentions that someone may have narked on someone, yet they don't do drugs. So it's like nothing adds up. So like I said, she's all over the board. And then again, in that footage, not once is she asking about her kids or her husband. It's more about the alleged abuse she endured at the hands of these intruders who miraculously left her tied up but didn't take her cell phone. And they really didn't harm her other than a hit to the face and some embarrassment. Okay. So law enforcement is always going to start from the position that everyone is a suspect until they can be ruled out as a suspect. So they take Samantha in for additional questioning, and her behavior here escalates in the strangeness category. Like, she gets really, really odd, as if it wasn't already. She starts so the way the video camera is facing, it would be like the back of the interrogator or the detective that's asking the question, the person asking the question, she would be kind of facing the camera, and then behind her back is like a little dry erase board on the wall. Okay. So, and at times they're leaving her alone in this room. She's got the dry erase board. So she would look up at the camera like side eye and then write stuff on the whiteboard, like, did you find my husband yet? And just like, now it's just attitude and give this cocky look like, what are you doing? It's just weird. She's on the phone with her mom, which they record, and she's ordering breakfast.
Oh.
And then she curls up on the floor like a child. Like, it's just weird. Almost like she's being inconvenienced and nothing life or death is going on at the moment.
Or mental illness. Is this
It could be. It
possible?
Could be. It is possible. Again, nothing about her kids. How are her kids doing? Seeming concerned about anyone but herself.
Where are the kids?
Don't know.
Okay.
I'm guessing with the aunt, and maybe mom finally made it there,
yeah.
but I don't know. And if you're interested in the psychology of her behaviors, there was a group called Explore With Us. They did an excellent educational documentary on this story and would have commentary on her behaviors on the footage. So it's really cool. They pulled from case files, interrogation video, news footage, all that stuff. It's really good, and we'll make sure that that's linked in the show notes. So the investigator returned to the room, and she finally asks, have we heard anything? And then she goes into this, I feel like there's something he hasn't been telling me. And I'm going, oh, here we go. Another wild ride. So it made me wonder immediately if she was like, I know they're not buying the shit I'm saying already, so I'm going to try a different tact here. And she says repeatedly and quite firmly when asked that she and Dagan were not drug users. Adamant, right? But then this doesn't shake out with her little plan with the Three Stooges on trying to plant drugs on her husband. It's like, okay, well, if you can corroborate that he's whatever, it doesn't make sense. So this is me shrugging. She also starts dropping details now in the interrogation room about an alleged restraining order against her husband. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Said he could be abusive toward her, but in the next breath, when police tell her they know about the other text messages to other men they found on her phone, she says her husband didn't care as long as she didn't bring them home.
Ew.
Yeah, very cringy. I mean, I may work for somebody, but it wasn't working in this case. So it seems inconsistent. She also says Dagan cheated on her multiple times. So she's just throwing out these things now. Her missing husband, making him look like a horrible human being. It could all be true. I don't know. But if she's concerned about him being kidnapped, you'd think that's what the conversation would be about.
Right.
In my opinion. Okay. So I won't break down all of her time being interrogated because it might bring my migraine back on. You might even catch one. But she thinks she's pretty smart, but she contradicts her answers she gave to police at the scene versus in the interrogation room, like just over and over again. And I am no detective, but I could still follow, like, wait. That didn't line up to what she said earlier.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to watch the interrogators work this woman. First, they're her friend, and they want to clear her. Like, hey, we know you didn't do anything, and da-da-da-da-da. But then after hours of this tactic, they completely shift gears, and they tell her, hey, we know you've been lying to us. You've been lying to us, blah, blah, blah. And then she freezes, like she's not expecting it. The look on her face, it's like, and then they really start to push her. She pulls another story out of her ass about venting to a friend at the hospital the day before who had another friend there, some guy she'd never met before, who heard her venting and said something about, that's no way to treat a woman, after she claims her husband's abusive toward her, blah, blah, blah. So she says this strange guy offered to deal with the situation for her.
Which might be the first truthful thing that she said.
It may be. You'll find out there's a couple nuggets of truth through this.
Okay.
But the majority of it's just crap. So she says this guy's name was John Rebel. And now her story turns entirely. She also mentions Tay, Octavius Rhymes, so where the house that they were making the enchiladas at, and John Sanford, which turns out to be John Rebel.
Is a TV character?
No.
I'm thinking Sanford.
John Rebel, yeah. So now she's dropping real names and saying that it was these guys who were in her house with this some third man. But remember on the scene, she said she didn't know them, and she was trying really, really hard to figure out if she knew them.
Yes,
really hard. But anyway, and then that name Luke never came up again. But now there's this third guy, Jose, and I mentioned him before. It's a guy in the tent with his wife in the backyard of Tay's house. So the cops go and pick up two of these three guys that she's mentioned. They pick up John and they pick up Jose. So John Sanford, not John Rebel, John Sanford, gets brought into the interview room. They tell him that Dagan is dead. Samantha told law enforcement that John was just a bystander and not the main perpetrator. And they're playing him too. It's great. Probably to gain his trust. And right away he's like, hey, I never plotted to kill this guy, even though the question wasn't asked. So not the brightest bulb, right? So he starts to imply that Jose threatened him to be involved and he went along to get along, kind of a thing. And that he was valuable to the real killers because he knew the layout of her house. They just met. It just, nothing adds up. He says that Samantha really didn't have a hand in it, like he's trying to protect her. But he does verify the ask for $20,000, which I would have thought that part was completely made up. That part was actually true. So that surprised me. And then he does admit to taking Dagan out of the home. So now there is proof that Dagan has been removed from the home, most likely against his will. Then they interview Jose. He says he doesn't even know these people. He only met Samantha the day before, which does seem to be true. But John has told investigators that Jose was the shooter and had a gun. And so, of course, they've got to investigate. I mean, they can't just think all these people are full of crap, right? So they go to where Jose is staying and they meet his wife/girlfriend. I heard it promoted both ways, so I don't know if they were actually married. It doesn't really matter, but so wife/girlfriend.
Significant other in his life.
Yep.
Yeah.
But John mentioned that Jose had the gun and possibly had given it to his wife/girlfriend to have her hide it. So they find it after not very long of a search, and her body language and actions are totally the opposite of Samantha's. Like, she had no idea what was going on, in my opinion. Just that someone did something and needed a place to hide a gun, and she wasn't going to ask any questions. So it was on the property. She didn't know where, but they easily found it. So back in the interrogation room, Jose drops the bombshell that Samantha was the ringleader of this whole thing. He's just like, wasn't me, and proceeds to give details that he would have had no way of knowing if they weren't true. So stuff cops hadn't released or talked to anybody about, okay? And he talks about their first meeting the day before. She's telling about her husband being abusive and all this stuff. And boy, it would sure be nice if she knew someone who could deal with that sort of things, like the little damsel in distress. And John is the one who did say he was that kind of a guy. So Jose says later that night, John, Tay, and Samantha and her kids show up to Jose's place, the tent presumably, and said that she needed them to do something for her. And that idiot brings a gun, which had been, ironically, a gift to his wife/girlfriend. Okay, so are you adding up all the pieces? There's a lot of players involved.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So then the cops bring in Octavius. Clearly not his first rodeo. This guy's like, he dishes right away and tries to strike a deal. He's like, he knows how this works. So here's the original plan concocted by these lunatics. Original plan had been to plant drugs on Dagan and frame him so that he could get carted away and Samantha would be free from the abusive husband. But instead, these idiots smoked all the meth that they were going to plant on Dagan.
That explains so much.
It does explain so much. And when Samantha had, in fact, left the front door unlocked, as they had planned, they improvised because now the drugs were gone. And so they're like, oh, we're going to go in and we said we'd be here, so we got to do something. So they said they'd show up. So they did. They beat Dagan, which is true. They left Samantha tied to a chair to make it look like she was innocent. Not sure what she could have promised them for doing her a solid, but they were all in it together now. So they take Dagan, who was already beaten pretty badly, out to the truck, but John had forgotten his cigarettes. So he goes back into the house, and that was when Samantha told him she'd just called her mom 2 counties over. And the reason she called her mom 2 counties over is because mom lived an hour away. And so she thought that would buy them time to escape. Okay, so there was a logical reason for Samantha calling her mom and not friggin' 911.
Right,
okay.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So again, they hadn't planned on Samantha's mom calling her aunt, right?
To come,
so now it's like, oh, shit. They realize they got a boogie. They got to get the hell out of there. So these 3 men, all jacked up on meth, took Dagan out to a secluded area. One of them shot Dagan. It's never been proven who. They point the fingers at each other. So it's John or Jose, according to these 3, okay? He was left beaten, nude, and shot in the back of the head. So just executed. And I mean, think about all those things I said about him. Like the art supplies for a kid. Like he was a kind human being. He did not deserve these.
I was really hoping there would be a twist with him.
Nope. The twist is all with the crazy wife. So cell tower records show that Samantha had not been home before the incident, even though she said they had been in bed together. And remember those text messages she fired off? Well, they found out what those were. First one, killed Day's phone, shut that shit down. So she was suspecting the cops were going to be looking at her. And then the later one, whatever, ditch, period, phone, period, move, period.
Ooh.
The fact that she didn't realize that police will always consider you a suspect until they clear you. Well, lesson number one, don't do meth.
Right. That.
Lesson number one.
I would like to escape. That would be, can I escape from that forever? Not for me, but for the people that are addicted. Yeah,
it
ruins the
ruins your brains. Like it's terrible. Anyway, but prison's probably the best place for her. And hopefully those kiddos are getting the mental health help that they need. You know, now they've lost both parents. It's just horrible. So police later discovered that she had her own drug dealer and, in fact, had bought drugs that night with all 5 of her children in tow. So, yeah. So she was likely doing meth, and that's what was ruining her marriage. And so Dagan had told people close to him when he was still alive that he knew the kind of person he was married to and wanted out of the relationship, but he stayed because of the kids. And even when he was working 2 jobs, she would call incessantly, according to him, make threats, constantly needing to be the center of his attention. One time when one of his bosses interceded and told her to stop because he's at work when this is going on, she accuses the boss of having an affair with her husband and then called like corporate and made a report because then they get involved. Like just a troublemaker and, you know, crazy and paranoid. I have my doubts whether Dagan was actually abusive or, you know, maybe it was he's getting fed up with her drug use and just complete neglect of the home and the kids and all the stuff. It was probably the other way around. I would suspect that she probably was the more abusive one in the relationship and he just has that sense of honor and duty and, you know, to be the provider and care for these kids. He didn't stand a chance. He fell in love with the wrong person. He was only 29 when he was killed. So John and Jose pled guilty. They each received 50 years in prison. Tay tried a different tact. It did not work, and he was sentenced to 93 years.
Oh, wow.
And Samantha went on trial in 2017. She was sentenced to 99 years. So,
man,
that's the story, you know, and it comes across as this poor woman and 5 kids and the dad's kidnapped and blah, 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 blah. And it's meth.
Yeah.
It's
the devil is in that drug.
Absolutely.
Whew.
So that's the wild roller coaster ride.
That is wild. Also, we even have known people who, you know, in when you hear victim of domestic violence, I like to say survivor of domestic violence. Yep. When you hear about survivors of domestic violence, I think your mind automatically goes to a woman. Because it's the majority of cases. But we certainly have known cases where I'm pretty certain it was the man who was the victim.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard in our society for a man to ever admit that you have somebody who has that kind of control.
I've seen it. Well, not like live and in action, but I've heard recordings of a friend of mine, a guy being abused by his wife. And he's recording it because she's saying he's abusive. And he's like trying to figure out how to protect himself.
Yeah.
And listening to these audio, it's just like, oh my God. You know, it's crazy. But I don't have stats in front of me on this, but I've heard in other podcasts that I listen to that have covered DV cases with same-sex couples, that there's a very high prevalence of that. Yeah, it's just.
Well, and just like sometimes a woman stays because of her kids. He obviously was probably staying because of his kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does work both ways. Just because we hear about it more one way doesn't mean it doesn't go the other way sometimes.
No. And you're right. We probably hear less of it just because of, you know.
the culture we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dagan, rest in peace. That was a doozy of I was really, because just so our listeners know, I typically, with very few exceptions, don't want to hear the stories because I kind of want to listen to it as I'm a listener to the podcast. And anyway, so I was really hoping there was going to be a twist at the end where even Dagan was involved with how things happened, went down or something. And that's really unfortunate. Well, I think but justice did prevail.
It did prevail, but I don't know. Divine justice didn't. I mean, what would have been really amazing is they found him alive.
Right.
And, now all these idiots are locked up for the rest of their lives, and he gets to go on and live an amazing life. That would have been better. But
well, here's hoping the children have more opportunities in a different type of household. So we will take a break right now, and we will be right back on the Escape Pod. Need an early morning boost or midday pick-me-up? Check out the Homebrew Coffee Shop, a coffee shop with a cause in the heart of the One Heart campus. Homebrew is home to delicious coffee, sweet treats, breakfast, and lunch items, a great place to meet friends or host small group meetings. Homebrew, located at 201 Kansas City Street in Rapid City. Open Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Homebrew, where you'll find hope for a home in every cup. Welcome back to the Escape Pod. I'm Julie here with co-host Charity, and we tell tales of true crime. We also, I require her to let me lighten it up before we end the hour or whatever time frame we're in, or else I wouldn't have agreed to do it.
Sorry, there are people walking outside our window well that should not be there, and it scared the bejesus out of me.
Hello.
Oh.
They can't get in that window.
They cannot get in unless
but it's
they have
still
a battering
weird.
ram. But yeah, it was creepy. Yeah.
And on that note, what would you like to escape from this week? Well, we did that at the beginning. Besides that, what would you like to escape to? I got to start over.
Well, I got to say, probably a night of sleeping straight through the night.
Yeah.
So no migraine, no snoring husband. I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Good luck
after
with
the
that.
night. Yeah, the last few nights I've had.
All right. I got nothing. I got nothing of excitement happening, and I'm okay with that. I'm just going to leave it right there.
Wow.
It's been a doozy of a week, and I'm just ready to just not.
But lots of good things are happening. So
yeah,
when you hear this, the podcast will be long released.
Yeah.
But in our world, it's going to drop tomorrow for the first time.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
A lot of work has been happening for the last several months in pulling this together. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. We were also waiting for a college student by the name of Alec Doyle to produce an original piece for our theme music. And we had to wait for his winter break from school to do that. So
totally worth the wait.
So shout out Alec Doyle. Thank you for that. And then what do we want to call KB? She's our...
I just call her our marketing
extraordinaire,
our marketing guru.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's good. Podcast assistant extraordinaire.
3-person show in addition to all of Alec's time he put into this. But it really does. Like, I have so much respect for people who do this for their jobs because it takes a lot, and our jobs are already a lot. But at least this is
a little fun part. We always say we get
fun,
to escape from just the day to day for even just a little while, and so that makes it fun.
Yeah. So anyway, good things are happening.
Thanks for joining us, folks.
Yeah, we appreciate you tuning in, and we appreciate your support. You can find us on anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Follow us, please. It kind of helps us stand out in the crowd, and share it with a friend who you think might enjoy it. But rating, reviewing, subscribing, all that kind of thing helps us gain more exposure. We'd really appreciate it. You can check out our website at escapepod.live. Our socials, all that fun stuff. Reach out to us at justbecause@escapepod.live. Or we really do plan to do at some point listener stories and share. I mean, I've shared, by the time you hear this, I don't know how many stories we've recorded of the things that I've been able to personally overcome. And we want to hear your stories. We don't want this to be about me indefinitely. Like, I think we've covered all the big bases. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear about the things that you've been able to do and ways you've made your life better and cycles you've been able to break. And it's really open to your interpretation. Anything that you've been able to escape and overcome, we're interested in hearing that. And if you want to give us permission to share that story, we would love to do that.
So those specifically you want to send to escapeartist@escapepod.live.
Right.
So if you are an escape artist yourself, that's where you want to go. We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it, though, that is optional.
Medication helps too sometimes. So stay resilient.
And keep laughing.